We all know about Sam's speech from the end of Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. It's the emotional crescendo of a 3-hour journey where Sam says what they've been holding on to the whole time is,
"There's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for."
On its face, the good that Sam is talking about is a very general, nebulous idea. The speech comes just after Frodo, in a blind rage and under the control of the ring, comes just inches from killing Sam, and is intercut with the Battle of Helm's Deep. Sam is good because he brings Frodo back from this moment of losing himself, and we have that very basic idea of good defeating evil with the Uruks running away and the river taking out all the Isengard orcs. That's all well and good, and it works in its simplicity, and until my most recent rewatch of the movie, it was good enough for me. It still gave me chills and made me tear up. But seeing as The Lord of the Rings have been my favorite movies since I very first saw them in the early 2000s, I never really pondered why that is. And looking around my house, or even just talking to me, you can see there are plenty of indications that this story means a lot to me. But there came a point when I was looking around and seeing all this stuff, and I had to wonder, why does all of it mean so much to me? I've been slowly unpacking that idea as I've rewatched, reread, and watched for the first time. I've been putting little pieces together here and there. The latest one that fit into place was, of course, Sam's speech. And given that it's the 20th anniversary of The Two Towers, I thought it was a good time to talk about it. What really clicked for me this time was realizing what exactly the good that Sam's talking about actually is. And while it can be a lot of things, with nature being one of the most prominent, the film hammers home over and over that people have good in them. Not necessarily that they are good, but that concept is worth fighting for, as Sam says. And when I say people, I mean the peoples of Middle-earth. Men, elves, dwarves, hobbits, wizards, ents, proto-hobbits, all of them come together towards a common good in one way or another in this movie. I originally conceived this idea as a belief in the importance of empathy, but I think you can take it a step further and look at the goodness that's inherently within all of us, and the importance of accessing it. It really begins with Frodo's relationship toward Gollum. In the Fellowship of the Ring, Frodo tells Gandalf that it's a pity Bilbo didn't kill Gollum when he had the chance. But Gandalf, measured as always, replies with,
"Pity? It was pity that stayed Bilbo's hand. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them, Frodo?"
It's an important lesson for Frodo, and thanks to his coming of age, which I talked about in my video on Fellowship, when Frodo finally comes face to face with Gollum, his instinct is no longer to wish death upon him, but to see that glimmer of light within him.
But now that I see him, I do pity him.
Frodo and Gollum have both been under the influence of the ring. Gollum obviously has had it much worse, and that gives Frodo a little window into Gollum that others don't have. Sam especially doesn't have that window. He can't see Gollum as anything but a villain. All he sees is his treachery and troublemaking from the very beginning. It's not like that's without warrant or anything, because we all know where Gollum ends up in terms of his actions, but Frodo doesn't care. My favorite line here, which clearly illustrates this whole point, is when he tells Sam,
"Because I have to believe he can come back."
This of course isn't only for Gollum's sake, but for his own as well. That's not in a selfish way. It's looking at Gollum and seeing what he's become, conniving, ring-obsessed, and tricksy, and believing that there's more to him. It's why he jogs his memory about his life as Smeagol. Gollum is the only person in a comparable situation to Frodo, and if Frodo believes with his whole self that Gollum can come back from the darkness, then he believed that he'd be able to do the same thing. It's a belief that no one is ever fully gone, and if there's one thing worth holding on to, through all of the anguish, hopelessness, and despair, it's this goodness. This relationship and the way it's used in the story is so central to the very fabric of the film that right after Sam's speech, we cut back to Gollum. It's a subtle reminder of this goodness within all of us, and Gollum's central role in the way that it's communicated throughout the movie. The next most notable example is Faramir, who, in a departure from the book, is introduced in a similar way to the way his brother Boromir was. Once he realizes that Frodo carries something as important and powerful as the ring, Faramir's whole drive becomes to get the ring. As someone who's never had the most important person in his life, his father, believe in his inherent worth and goodness,
you give him no credit, and yet he tries to do your will.
it makes sense that this is how Faramir is introduced. He had a great relationship with Boromir, but now he's dead, leading him to a place of darkness and a lack of faith in people. All he wants is to show his father that he's good and worthy, but the avenues he's taking to do that are antithetical to that very goal. His quest for power makes him exactly like the very person he's rejected, yet still seeks the approval of. And even worse, a drive for power is the main character trait of Saruman, and of course Sauron. It takes the length of the movie, but Faramir eventually does come around to reason by the end, in no small part thanks to Sam.
You want to know why your brother died? He tried to take the ring from Frodo. After swearing an oath to protect him, he tried to kill it. The ring drove your brother mad.
Between Sam's outbursts here and the whole movie's worth of seeing Frodo and Sam look out for each other, and Frodo look out for Gollum, and their single-minded quest, Faramir, like Boromir, begins to see the error of his ways. He learns that if you're fighting to protect what's good, instead of to gain power over what's bad, you're better off. But unlike Boromir, Faramir realizes the destructiveness of his mindset before it's too late, and he's able to let Frodo and Sam go, and is actually able to learn from his mistakes. By Return of the King, he's helping Gandalf, and however misguided, putting the lives of others before his own when he leads the march on Osgiliath. For a man whose hearts are easily corrupted, it's pretty significant to see Faramir learning a lesson, and applying it about what's actually important. Merry also has a fairly significant storyline in which he fights for the inherent goodness of the people of Middle-earth. After starting the movie saying,
We might have made a mistake leaving the Shire, Pippin.
Merry comes all the way around at this point. All it takes is for him to see Isengard being emptied to realize the true magnitude of what he got into with Pippin, Frodo, and Sam. And his whole drive becomes to get Treebeard and the rest of the Ents to fight against Saruman, all to keep his friends safe. Merry's first reaction to Treebeard telling him not to be hasty is,
Hasty? Our friends are out there. They need our help.
His first thought is never for his own safety, it's for that of his friends, the people he loves, who he went on this quest to help and to keep safe in the first place. And just a minute later, he yells at Treebeard,
You're part of this world, aren't you?
The world here, again, is full of people worth saving. Nature is a good thing, but the people who dwell within it are what bring it its full value. And once the Ents temporarily decide that they won't be going to war, Merry says this to Pippin.
Fires of Isengard will spread, and the woods of Tuckborough and Buckland will burn, and all that was once green and good in this world will be gone. There won't be a Shire, Pippin.
While the Shire is basically the ideal place for anyone to live, with its endless green and natural beauty, which is one of Tolkien's most prominent things that he calls good, the Shire wouldn't be what it is without the people in it. That's why it's so important it's saved. There won't be a Shire because there will be no one to live in the Shire. Treebeard also finally sees the importance of all this, once he realizes some of his own friends have been killed due to greed and power hungriness.
Many of these trees were my friends, creatures I had known from nut and acorn.
It's no longer an abstract thing for Treebeard. He, like the rest of our characters, has that love for people and their goodness. It's only when it hits close to home that the loss of their goodness is made real.
They had voices of their own.
Whether it's a creature as small and alone as Gollum, or as big and together as the Ents, they have worth. Over in Rohan, I'm not convinced that Theoden's motivations are individual people, as much as they are about glory, honor, and legacy.
If this is to be our end, then I would have them make such an end as to be worthy of remembrance.
Like with Boromir and Faramir, this mindset isn't sufficient. It can help with your short-term goals, but it doesn't edify the same way that keeping people and goodness in mind would. You won't get as far if what's on the forefront of your mind is your country instead of the people in it. And like Faramir, by the end, Theoden does come around, and puts the people of his family first by the end of Return of the King. This is thanks to Aragorn. When they're about to be overrun at Helm's Deep, he has a plan.
Ride out with me. Ride out and meet them.
For death and glory.
For Rohan. For your people.
Aragorn, like always, has people on his mind, and not whatever songs might be sung about his final charge at Helm's Deep. It's the reason why Legolas and Gimli continue to fight with and for him as well.
We have trusted you this far, you have not led us astray.
People have been important to the three hunters from the beginning. Tracking two small hobbits is the reason that they are where they are in the first place. And that same motivation is what helps Theoden realize what is important in the moment and leading into the following movie. And as Gandalf arrives with Éomer, their reasoning for their charge likewise isn't for death and glory, but because
Theoden King stand alone.
there's no reason to fight for such things if the people within aren't the true motivation. By the end of the movie, Sam even begins to come around in Gollum. He's the one that helps bring Frodo back from the brink of personal destruction. As Frodo is on top of him, ready to kill him, all Sam has to say is,
It's me. It's your Sam. Don't you know your Sam?
it's an appeal to the most basic human thing about them, their relationship to each other. It's a microcosm of why they need to keep going. They're fighting not only for themselves, but for the rest of the Fellowship, the people at home, and for the very idea that there's goodness at the center of everyone. Sam helps Frodo come back to the light in large part thanks to the example that Frodo has shown him throughout the movie in regards to Gollum. If Frodo wouldn't give on Gollum, then Sam won't give up on Frodo either. These ideas are what Saruman can never understand.
Who now has the strength to stand against the armies of Isengard and Mordor?
All he wants is domination and power. He wants to be in the position that Sauron is in, and Sauron only ever wanted to be in the position that Eru was in. Using this as your main motivation will get you somewhere. Sauron did gain much power, and Saruman amassed a massive army, but in doing so, it failed to account for why the people they seek to control are actually fighting. Their pride and arrogance led them to disregard the Ents and to disregard the will and determination of the hobbits, who fight for their friends and not for power. All the villains want to do is control and not empathize. Though I'm well into my 20s now, I've come to realize that these are the reasons why The Lord of the Rings is a tale that really matters, as Sam says. They've been my favorite movie since I was 6, back when I was
Too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going because they were holding on to something. What are we holding on to, Sam?
that the characters in The Lord of the Rings show us that everyone has goodness within them. Frodo is eventually proven wrong about Gollum at the end of Return of the King, but Gollum allowed him to learn to believe in himself in the first place. They each had the ability to overcome the Draw of the Ring. Gollum doesn't do it, but Frodo does, which makes the idea even stronger. We see how difficult it is to do the right thing, to listen to the light within you and remember that of others. But Frodo does the right thing anyway, even though it's hard. He does it because it's right, and because he's learned about the importance of the good within himself. The Two Towers is full of characters and lessons worthy of our pursuit. Through the toughest times, and even though it's difficult, they display the qualities that we all possess and have the capacity to nurture.